Find out what makes these Wolverines so good and head out to the Pirate Radio Live line and talk to Aaron McMann from MLive.com and also the Ann Arbor News. He joins us here today on Pirate Radio Live. Aaron, appreciate your time. How you doing today?
I'm well. Good afternoon. Good to be with you.
Yes, sir. And, man, it is preview season, at least for us here at Pirate Radio. We're going to go through all the football opponents. We got the longtime voice of Marshall, Steve Cotton, joining us next week on the show. And we'll kick it all off today with Aaron McMann from Ann Arbor News, MLive, and talk about those Michigan Wolverines. Pirates going to the Big House week 1 to take on Michigan. And first of all, Aaron, the excitement level around this team in Ann Arbor, I mean, this is one of those that it sounds like almost championship or bust heading into 2023. Is that kind of the expectation there for the fans there in Michigan?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, I've been covering this team now since 2017, and I can't think of a season where expectations were any higher. They've been high before. They've been picked to win the Big Ten championship before, but now this team's coming off, back-to-back Big Ten titles, back-to-back playoff appearances. I think there's this feeling that they probably should have won their semifinal game against TCU back in January or end of December, and it didn't happen. So I think they're out for blood. I mean, they got a lot of returning guys, a lot of talent on this team, and expectations are just that. I mean, Jim Harbaugh said a month or so ago that he hasn't had a better Michigan football team coming out of spring than he has this year. So I think everything is in the right spot for them. I think the trajectory is up. Expectations are super high. And now they've got to kind of deliver on those.
Aaron McMann joining us on the Pirate Radio Live line. We'll talk Michigan football and then get to know some of their personnel, some X's and O's, things like that. But kind of big picture with Jim Harbaugh, Aaron, from the outside, we hear this about every coach, and we talk about people losing their jobs as if it's nothing here in the sports world. It's just kind of how it is. But we've heard about Harbaugh in the hot seat, or Harbaugh maybe exploring NFL options or things like that. You're right there in the middle of it all. How real has that been over the years on both sides of it? On the side of maybe Michigan cuts bait with Harbaugh and goes a different direction, or Harbaugh jumps to the NFL, goes to another school, something like that. Has there been any real fire with the smoke over the years with any of that?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely cut it both ways, right? Like, I can remember early 2018 when Michigan brought on Shea Patterson at quarterback, and, there's talk of playing for a national championship then, and they kind of bottomed out at one point, and then after the 2020 season, Michigan goes 2-4 during the COVID year, Jim Harbaugh, quite frankly, was on the hot seat. There were a lot of folks here in Ann Arbor that I think were growing tired of him. I think that he had won a lot of games, they had a lot of success, but they hadn't done what I think everyone wanted him to do, and that was to win a conference championship and take Michigan to kind of that upper echelon pinnacle of college football. He hadn't got it done. So I think his back was against the wall going into 2021, quite frankly. He overhauled his coaching staff, brought on a new defensive coordinator, kind of took reins of the offense a little bit more and kind of molded it more in his vision of his style of play, of like what he's comfortable doing. And that's kind of changed things. I mean, he's brought on over Michigan players to help, coach. They've kind of gotten back to the peak Jim Harbaugh at Stanford and maybe with the 49ers in the NFL where, they like to run the football, and that's kind of been their offensive identity the last couple of years. So, yeah, I mean, between all that, he has, interviewed with NFL teams now the last couple of off seasons. I think things are probably a little bit more serious 2 years ago than they were this past year. Nonetheless, I mean, Jim has been pretty open and honest about it all. He said, yeah, there's still a desire to get back to the NFL. He's had a lot of success now here in college. I think there's that burning, desire in him to potentially to win a Super Bowl. He's gotten to the pinnacle there. He wasn't able to win it. And I think he sees his brother having success and given the complications of college nowadays with the transfer portal and NIL and everything else, I think you're seeing a lot of college coaches look at the NFL as a way to get out, and get there. Now, I don't know if that's the case now with Jim. It's been 2 years now, and he hasn't gotten a job, so I don't know what the future looks like. But I can say this: he's as happy, and I think I've seen him. He's as optimistic as he's been since he's gotten to Michigan.
Aaron McMann joining us on the Pirate Radio Live line. Aaron from MLive and Ann Arbor News, and he is the beat writer for the Michigan Wolverines. And one thing you can do to get the fan base behind you, Aaron, is beat the rival, Ohio State, right? And after all those losses in a row, to beat them back-to-back years and to beat them the way the Wolverines did, that has to have Harbaugh with 100% approval rating from Michigan fans with the 2 wins over Ohio State these last 2 seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in the good years where they were winning 9 and 10 games, that was kind of their Achilles heel. I mean, they couldn't beat the rival Ohio State, they couldn't beat the in-state rival Michigan State, and they've been able to kind of change that the last couple of years. I think the fans more than anything wanted Michigan obviously beat Ohio State, and they figured out a way to do it. You can make the case that maybe Ohio State had the more talented team the last couple of years, that Michigan had the better game plan, they had the better execution, they had the better coaching staff, and I think the better team unit. And I think that was the difference. I said this countless times now, but Ohio State kind of went to that spread offense. We all know the great receivers they have. They've had some excellent quarterbacks there. And Michigan's been able to find a way to slow them down and kind of do something, get them uncomfortable. And that's kind of been their MO the last couple of years. It's worked. Some folks wondered after 2021 if that was maybe just a one-off when Michigan beat them in the Big House, and they proved last November in Columbus that it wasn't. They beat them on both sides of the ball at the line of scrimmage. Their running game was fantastic, even when they were missing All-American running back in Blake Corum. So it certainly changed things. You went from Jim Harbaugh being on the hot seat because of his inability to beat Ohio State and thus get to the Big Ten championship, to the pressure now being on Ryan Day at Columbus.
Talking to Aaron McMann, Michigan, first up for the Pirates this year to kick off the 2023 season. It'll be in the Big House. It'll be noon, and it'll be on Peacock, Aaron. What'd you think of when you saw that news come out a couple weeks ago that this game would be played on Peacock?
Yeah, we knew as part of the Big Ten's new TV deal, it's I think a 7-year, $7 billion deal, that Peacock was involved. We didn't know to what degree, how many games were going to be on it. You had a feeling some of the big name brands would be on there, so NBC could drive subscriptions and everything else. But in a way, it makes sense. I know there's some fans here in Ann Arbor, especially the older fans that aren't maybe familiar with the whole streaming environment, obviously not happy because the game certainly will sell out, and it's going to be a hot ticket no matter what. So not a surprise. Michigan's obviously one of the Big Ten's biggest brands. I'm sure they want to get them on there. It's not surprising. I'm curious to see how things shake out in the fall there.
Yeah, and Aaron, if every Pirate fan is actually going to the game that has said they're going to the game, we're going to have a lot of purple and gold in the Big House that day, because people have been planning on this one for a while, not only to go see the Pirates play, which ECU has a pretty good traveling fan base, but also to play in a historic stadium and to face a team that has championship expectations this year. So I do think you'll see a little bit of purple and gold amongst the maize and blue there in September.
Yeah, I mean, typically road teams, they'll bring a decent crowd, so looking forward to it. I think there's a lot of respect here for a program like East Carolina. Michigan isn't a program that tends to look down on those teams. I mean, they're going to prepare, they're going to be ready to go, and it should be a fun atmosphere, early September.
Yeah, and Aaron, I don't know how much you have dove into East Carolina yet, or if at all. As from our perspective, I think everybody will tell you they'd rather have played this game last year because East Carolina did lose about, and I haven't crunched the exact numbers, but I'm putting it at around like 97% of their offensive production, with Holton Ahlers, who's working out with the Seahawks right now, 2 1,000-yard receivers. You got Keaton Mitchell working out with the Ravens. So you've got just a ton of new guys on offense. Really makes us nervous. It explains a little bit the 36-point line that we're seeing out there. Michigan favored by that much. And we were talking about you coming on the show earlier this week, and I said, my first question for Aaron's going to be, is there any kind of weakness East Carolina can exploit on this Michigan team, this powerhouse team? So how about that one, Aaron? If there is one thing that maybe Jim Harbaugh or fans are concerned about this team, what is it, if there is one?
Yeah, there are probably maybe 2 question marks with this team. They're relatively deep in almost every position. They got talent, a lot of returning starters pretty much everywhere. However, the passing game will be a question. Everyone likes to talk about J.J. McCarthy, the starting quarterback. He's great, Problem is Michigan doesn't have a ton of weapons for them. They haven't really had that the last couple of years. Those all Big Ten, all American caliber receivers. They just don't have them. They do have a returning receiver in Cornelius Johnson, who will be their number one. He had a very good game last year against Ohio State. He was, he was big in certain moments, but he wasn't consistent. Didn't put together on a week-to-week basis. I think the lack of depth in the run game is probably an area where, in a way, opponents can shut Michigan down. If you can force them to run the football and make them one-dimensional, I think is your best chance. Now, I'm not going to. That's not to say East Carolina could stop them. That's a different story on the ground. But I do think Michigan's passing game isn't as explosive as maybe one may think from the outside. And then defensively, the one question mark is that quarterback. They've got one starter returning, Will Johnson. He was all Big Ten as a freshman last year. He's going to be good. He's great, but they don't know who the other starters are going to be on the opposite side of the ball. They've got a lot of guys that are inexperienced. A lot of guys. In fact, they had to move over a receiver to cornerback this spring to kind of. And they think he's going to be the starter. He didn't look too great in the spring game. I think he's still got some coming along to do. So there's really some, I think, nervousness at that second cornerback spot, to the point that they even had to bring in a grad transfer just about a week ago from UMass to fill that role. So uncertainty at corner, lack of depth at receiver, those are probably two of the areas I could see, East Carolina trying to at least exploit.
How about the flip side of that, Aaron, with a team with not a lot of weaknesses, a team that's going to be preseason top 5, top 3, whatever they are? What are the strengths? What are you basically counting on every week Michigan doing well on the football field?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what the last couple of years of Michigan's offensive identity. They're deep and they're talented and experienced up front the offensive line. I mean, you've got 2 starting guards who were all Big Ten guys last year. They brought in 3 grad transfers, all of whom had started at their previous institution. They're expected to jump in and start right away. And then you've got 2 of their key running backs back. Blake Corum, who, if he had not gotten hurt in the second to last week last year, probably would have been a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. Rushed for 1,400 yards. Had a monster season last year. And then his comrade Donovan Edwards, again, he played injured most of the year. He still almost rushed for 1,000 yards. Michigan's bread and butter is running the football, and I expect them to do it again this year. So running the ball specifically, they've always been deep at tight end. They like to use those obviously in the passing game and blocking. They got a stud coming back in Colston Loveland. He kind of broke out last year again as a true freshman. They brought on a grad transfer at tight end from Indiana and AJ Barner, another weapon maybe in the passing game I expect them to use. So the running game is going to be their bread and butter. I expect them to give Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum significant carries. They could choose to use Donovan Edwards in the passing game as well. But that's kind of where Michigan's offense starts and finishes.
Talking to Aaron McMann on the Pirate Radio Live Line as we preview Michigan football 2023 and East Carolina UNLV Bowling Green in the non-conference schedule for Michigan this year. And about and I've talked to folks from Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, Aaron, as they leave the American Athletic Conference and head to the Big 12, and recently talked to somebody from Oklahoma ahead of ECU and Oklahoma's baseball matchup in the Charlottesville Regional in the NCAA tournament. So I've kind of got their perspectives on moving conferences, what it's going to be like. How about the Big 10 welcoming in those California schools, and how funky is that? I mean, it's going to take a while to get used to. It's obviously going to raise the profile even more, if that's even possible, for what the Big Ten has done. But what's the chatter amongst the fans, the folks around there, when it comes to USC and UCLA?
Yeah, when it was first announced, I think there was a bit of a surprise. I mean, no one really saw it coming. There were no leaks when it was kind of first unveiled last summer.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a shock, but I think when after the dust settled and I think folks realized what was going on, I think it made a lot of sense. I mean, the Big Ten has moved into the as you guys know, the DC and then the New York City market by adding recently, Maryland and Rutgers, about 10 years ago. So for them to go out west to Los Angeles, I think made sense. There is some historic, matchups between Michigan and USC in the past, Ohio State, USC. So it created some bigger matchups. It obviously it created opportunity for the Big Ten from a TV standpoint to get the Los Angeles TV market. So that kind of puts the Big Ten in basically the 3 biggest in the country in New York, Chicago, and LA. So business-wise, it made total sense. And where things are headed, clearly with college football from an expansion standpoint, I think the Big Ten felt the need to kind of keep up with the SEC. with the SEC recently adding obviously Texas and Oklahoma. So I think it was by necessity. I think it made sense for all parties involved. I know UCLA's athletic department was struggling financially for a while, so I think the infusion in cash helps. I think if you ask some of the traditionalists in the conference, I know Jim Harbaugh, in fact, was asked about it last summer, and I don't think he was a big fan of it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I mean, obviously they don't make the decisions. It's up to the school presidents and the conference and the athletic directors, obviously.
Aaron McMann joining us, Ann Arbor News, MLive, as we get ready for another football season. East Carolina and Michigan will go at it week 1 in the Big House, and going to be quite a scene there as the Pirates travel to Michigan for the first time ever. Aaron, been great chatting with you today. Any big news this offseason for Michigan when it comes to transfers? Anything happen in spring ball that was eye-opening, or is it all just kind of the calm before the storm here with Michigan right now?
Yeah, nothing earth-shattering. I mean, Michigan actually went through spring with a lot of injuries, a lot of guys banged up, a lot of guys kind of healing from the end of the off season. So we didn't glean it too much from the spring. We expect a deep team. This is going to be a deep, talented team, really on both sides of the ball. I expect teams to have a difficult time stopping the run and in Michigan in running against Michigan. So they got a lot of talented guys. They got some guys, and this is from a program that lost really 7 or 8 guys to the NFL last year. Jim Harbaugh has a program rolling right now. It's a well-oiled machine, a lot of depth, a lot of talent, and I'm expecting this team to certainly compete for national championship in the fall.
Aaron, for folks that want more Michigan news, get to know the opponent more, where can they go to see your work and read what you got going on?
Yeah, we're at MLive.com/Wolverines. It's MLive.com. We cover Michigan head to toe all season long with a local authority on the program. And I'm on Twitter at Aaron McMann. Aaron spelled Aaron, and McMann is McMann. Good
stuff. Enjoyed the chat, Aaron, and we'll try to track you down again as we get closer to kickoff that week of the game. And I'll wrap it up with this, Aaron. We've talked about the Michigan perspective on things. And I see on your bio on Twitter you're a Central Michigan grad. What, if anything, comes to mind when you hear East Carolina? I mean, do you know any players? Do you, I don't know, Pirate lore? What if anything hits the brain when East Carolina is said to you?
Yeah, I've watched some handful of their games the last couple of years. I mean, it seemed like they had a kind of a high octane. They like to score a lot of points. It was a high octane offense. I think that's kind of what Michigan's expecting. No, I don't know if that's going to be the case, but it's a program I'm familiar with. I mean, I've seen their games before. And as I said before, I think Michigan isn't going to take any little program lightly.
Yeah.
This is a Michigan program, keep in mind, that lost to Appalachian State back in 2007. They lost to Toledo. They've had their share of upsets. So I think they've learned their lesson. And I think Jim Harbaugh is going to have his team motivated and ready to go in September.
App State has been said quite a bit around here since this game was announced. We're holding on to that hope, Aaron. That's about all we got right now. That the Pirates can do what the Mountaineers did all those years ago. Aaron, great chatting with you, man. We'll keep in touch and hopefully get you on down the road again, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Aaron McMann talking Michigan football today on Pirate Radio Live.